Okay, we are recording. I have everybody muted, but if you have a question, you can definitely unmute yourselves as we get toward the end of the presentation. If you have questions while we get started, that's fine. You can put them in the chat if you like, or you can wait till the end and ask them. I will do my best to answer all the questions, of course. If I don't have an answer for you, I'll definitely work to get an answer for you. So once again, today is ended the 89th day of school. So out of 180, so we're about halfway there. I know it has been an extremely interesting last couple of years. It's also been an interesting 3 weeks back. We've been at school for the second semester. Today is tomorrow will be the end of the third week of the second semester. So it'll be the 14th day of the second semester because we didn't have classes on Monday, the 3rd of January. So we're getting settled in here. So there has been a lot going on with a lot of cases and surges, and we have some adjusted guidance for you. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. And okay, so welcome to our Tiger Talk. We will be having these Tiger Talks. I want to do them every third Thursday of each month. So at this stage of the game, our next one will be on February 17th, and I'll send that out and just remind you here at the end of this call. So we do have some updates with regards to COVID protocols. The following, they're updates that we just received from Imperial County Health Department regarding quarantine for positive cases as well as exposures. This seems to be the topic. It has been for the last going on 2 years in March. So real quick, staff and students who test positive. Now it's still a 10-day quarantine. These are, mind you, these are for positive cases and exposure. So if we have a student or staff member who tests positive, it's a 10-day quarantine, right? But now there's a minimum requirement of days of quarantine or isolation. So if the student or the staff member no longer has symptoms on the 5th day and they produce tests also on the 5th day, they may return to school or to work. So we've had some folks under this situation who tested positive and on the 5th day are no longer experiencing symptoms and have a negative test, preferably a negative antigen test, and they can come back to work or come back to school. We've also had, by the same measure, we've also had people that have continued to test negative on the 5th day and have continued to feel symptoms. So if a student or a staff member are feeling sick, then by all means continue to stay home. So this illness, it hits people, it impacts people differently, and you just never know. So the new guidance, if you test positive, student or staff member, it's a minimum 5-day isolation, and on the 5th day, if there's no more symptoms and it's a negative test, the student and or the staff member is allowed to come back to school. Okay. Now, if they are test positive on the 5th day and have no symptoms, you still got to stay home. But let's say on the 7th day, you get a negative test, then you got to, if you send that to us, then you can come back to school. And what usually happens is a student shows up to school, they bring a copy of the negative test to our attendance office, and then we go from there. You can always screenshot it, send it to me as well. Now, This is for positive cases. Now, for students exposed at school, okay, that means they've come into close contact with a positive case, confirmed positive case. They'll need to, we're still following the K-12 guidance for quarantine, but for students who are exposed, you can do a standard quarantine, which is 10 days, or the modified. For staff that are, depending on the vaccination status, they will be following the 5-day minimum quarantine as well. If staff is exposed and vaccinated but not boosted, they'll not need to quarantine, but will need to provide a negative test between days 3 and 5. And staff that's unvaccinated will also need to quarantine for 5 days and will need a negative test on day 5. Students who are quarantined can do or students that are exposed can do the standard quarantine, which is 10 days, or they can also do the modified quarantine, which is 2 negative tests within the 7-day period. I might need to check my facts on that. We just had a presentation this afternoon, and I'll check that. But I do know that there's a modified as well as a standard quarantine, which is 10 days. So, you know, I want to make sure that we get your children back in school face-to-face as much as possible. So that's where we're at. Those are the updates. The biggest updates have been for positive cases, the 5-day minimum isolation. So, okay. Independent study. This has been a topic as well, especially this year. We've always had independent study. All schools usually offer some form of independent study. This year, we were mandated by the state to offer independent study because of the current conditions. So we do have 2 models: short-term independent study. So short-term independent study, and it's IS, must be signed by the parent or guardian. So if you've had a child who's tested positive and stays home on, or it has been exposed, I'm sorry about that, who's been exposed, our attendance personnel has reached out and you've signed an agreement for short-term independent study. This is only available to students who are out for 15 days or less. We cannot a short-term independent study model on a long-term basis. Then the assignments and whatnot must be completed within 30 days of the beginning of the study. Most students who use this component are on quarantine due to testing positive or being exposed. So this is the short-term independent study. And what happens with the short-term independent study is it allows the students, if they're able to continue to work on assignments while they're at home, they submit those assignments. We submit them to our teachers submit a sample of a work sample to the attendance office. And then we're able to collect the ADA based on submitted, because that's how independent study works. Attendance is usually taken by when the child is shows up to school for their seat. But in independent study, it's based on the amount of work that's completed. That's determined by the teacher. All right. So this is for short-term component. Now, since we've gone to the 5-day minimum quarantine for positive cases, if it happens to land on a weekend and the child comes back on day 5 with a negative test, then it's not 5 school days on independent study. So usually those absences are excused, and we don't put them on a short-term independent study. It's usually got to be 5 days minimum for a short-term independent study, but no more than 15 school days. All right, so that's a short-term. Long-term independent study, this is for students or families who may have some health concerns or are at higher risk. And this is also an option that's available. If anyone is interested in long-term independent study, the request must be made with the designated administrator. So if your last name begins with A through L, you would be reaching out to Mr. Rubio. If it's M through Z, you would be reaching out to Mrs. Din. You would reach out to the administrator, set up a meeting. We will provide you with the independent study master agreement. And then we want to have a meeting with you so that we can agree, we can go over exactly and answer questions and explain what independent study on a long-term basis is. The meetings can also be held through Zoom. It doesn't have to be in person. But the long-term independent study is 100% online via our online program at IHS, which is Edmentum. So the student is assigned 6 classes, and they don't attend physically, but you sign a master contract, and you need to make sure, we ask that you log on each day for an hour per class. There is a synchronous component that's mandated to be once a week. Mr. Pettijohn and Ms. Chavez are overseeing the independent study. And the thing about this one is, if the family, let's say you're a long-term independent study for 3-4 weeks and you feel it's not working, or you want to come back to face-to-face, you have every right to request to come back face-to-face, and we have 5 days to transition you back to face-to-face. Now, what happens on that, because of class numbers and limits, we may not be able to give you the classes that you had before, but you will get the classes that you're required to have. So, you know, for some students, the long-term independent study works because it's very independent. With all the instruction is delivered through the online program. There's tutorials in the online program, and there's units and there's mastery tests. The only thing that we do require is that testing is done on site, on campus. And that's all part of the master agreement as well. That's why it's important to sit down with the administrator to answer questions and go through that document so that we understand the stipulations. And we have to also, if the student is not logging on or is not producing the assignments, then we need to revisit it to re-engage that student and either help them to be successful in independent study or bring them back to face-to-face. And if families don't want to come back face-to-face and they're not making progress in independent study, then state of California still requires students to be in school. So we would go through the SARB process on that, even through independent study. We haven't had to do that, fortunately. And you know, families would be advised of that before we move in that direction. But you know, that's long-term independent study. So short-term, once again, is for kids that are going to be out a week, 2 weeks, no more than 15 days. Long-term, you're looking at an entire semester, but with the option or the right, if you will, to come back to face-to-face. So whether it's independent study or whether it's face-to-face, the progress still needs to be made. So those are the options that are offered right now. Students are required to attend school under the options provided by the California Department of Ed right now. So in the past, we've offered independent study, but we weren't mandated to. Right now, schools across the country, or at least in the state of California, are required to offer independent study on a long-term basis because of the conditions with COVID. Will this option be available to us next year? I don't know. There are discussions happening at the state level where it may be, but at this stage of the game, we don't know if it's going to be available or if it's going to be available or mandated at the degree that it is now. Okay. Yes, so let's see. Face coverings are still required indoors. And your kids are going to tell me that, oh, Mr. Apodaca sounds like a broken record, to use a cliche, because I remind our students every morning that face coverings indoors are still mandated. So we've shared this with our students and all of our teachers to how to wear the face covering appropriately or correctly, how not to wear it. So the right and wrong ways to wear your face covering are shown on this image. If worn incorrectly, its effectiveness in preventing the spread of COVID is minimal. So again, this is information that we've gotten from the California Department of Public Health, Imperial County Department of Public Health. So indoors, we do ask our students, we do expect our students and our staff members to wear their masks appropriately. Like the part where it says do, the 2 check marks, that's how you should wear your mask. Where it says don't, I mean, we've seen the mask under the nose, under the chin. When you're outdoors, they're not mandated outdoors. But in the classroom, in our offices, the expectation is that you wear your mask and you wear it correctly. We redirect our students, you know, we try to be we are understanding. And if a student continues to, you know, not wear their mask correctly, you know, you'll probably get a phone call either from a teacher or from Mr. Rubio, Mrs. Din, or myself, asking you to help us make sure your child's wearing their mask appropriately or correctly. And fortunately, we haven't had any problems or any issues. We constantly, we have to remind kids to wear them. Sometimes I have to remind adults as well. If adults aren't wearing their mask correctly, let us know. I mean, we all have to work together to remind ourselves what's going on. If I'm not wearing my mask correctly, or if I'm out of compliance with something, I would definitely appreciate you calling me on it. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help each other out. These are some resources that are there. And again, I'll share this PDF of this presentation with all of our parents. Updated resources, California Safe Schools for All, K-12 guidance for 21-22 school year, and the COVID-19 Imperial County Health Department website there that we have. Also, the front office, again, all of you know the number, but extension is 22195. This is the number to our attendance office, extensions 22196. Counseling, if you call the counseling office at extension 22491, Mrs. Marini does an awesome job of setting up appointments. But our counselors, you know, A through GA is Ms. Castillo at extension 22489. GE through N is Ms. Moss at 22411, and O through Z is Mrs. Hauk at extension 22490. And the counseling office extension is 22491. Administration, you have Mr. Rubio, who oversees students with last names who begin with A through L. You have his extension there, 22198. Mrs. Din oversees students with last names that begin with M through Z. She's at 22198. And yours truly, I'm at extension 22199, or you can always call or text me at 760-540-1366. As a matter of fact, I mean, if you leave me a message in the office, or you reach out to our front office secretary, Ms. Leonora Barcenas, she'll leave me the message. But you are all very good about sending me a text message or giving me a call. If you call me on my cell and I don't recognize the number, I very rarely won't pick up. We'll pick up, so leave me a voicemail. But if you send me a text message, I want to say that most of the time, 99% of the time, I respond pretty quick. If I don't respond, please don't hesitate to text me again. Sometimes if you reach out to me, I will listen to the message, or I get an email and I'll forward it, depending on the last name. I'll forward it to Mrs. Din or to Mr. Rubio. So sometimes if you call me and you don't get a call back from me, but you get one from Mr. Rubio or Mrs. Din, that's because I've referred your call to them, depending on your child's last name. Okay. And again, my door is always open. You know, once you speak to Mrs. Din or Mr. Rubio, and you know, 9 out of 10 times that takes care of it. So I'm always available. If we've been impacted with COVID ourselves in the offices. So, we're getting it done, doing the best that we can, and moving forward. But sometimes if you call the office and you don't get someone to answer, please leave a voicemail. And if it's urgent, send me a text message. Send me a text message. If I'm in a meeting, I don't usually, I try not to look at my text messages at that time. But if I get a text from a parent, I usually respond, or I'll forward it to someone who can respond to you. And if I don't respond within an hour, please send me another message. You're not imposing on me. You're not bothering me. I want to be able to help as much as possible. So questions. Thank you, Tiger Pride. Let me stop sharing my screen. Also, some of you might have children who are seniors. We're having a senior meeting. Tomorrow, we're having a virtual meeting, virtual senior meeting, just to give them some information. We're going to do the same thing with every class, with juniors next week, sophomores, as well as ninth graders. We want to really, second semester, focus on trying to get back into some rhythms and routines. We want to make sure that our kids are in school on time. I remind them every day, make sure you wake up a little bit earlier. If you're running late, get to school on time. We want to make sure that they're compliant and compliance with dress codes, with electronic devices. I'm really going to ask for your help on that. We've allowed them to use them cell phones at lunchtime. They use them before school, after school, and we didn't see a problem with allowing them at lunch. But in passing periods in the classroom, if the teacher allows it for instructional purposes, that's fine. But once they leave the classroom in passing period, we're asking them to unplug. Lunchtime, they can use them. Your kids have done an awesome job with that. Often we do have to remind them, hey, put your cell phone away. They walk around nowadays with AirPods. I've told them for the Secret Service, they need to put the AirPods away. I think back when I was in high school, it was the Walkmans, I guess, but different time now. So we are asking for your support in helping us, have a little bit more structure during the day in a very unstructured situation. So dress code as well is in effect, and we want to be understanding as well. We know there's a lot going on, but we do have a certain level of expectation of our students, and we always ask for your support on that. Are there any questions? I know there's some people on the call. If I gave incorrect information, please correct me on it. Like I said, we will have another Tiger Talk. You mark your calendar for Thursday, February 17th. We do have 2 3-day weekends coming up in February. We'll be off on February 7th, as well as February 21st. Okay. There's a lot going on. I know our ag programs are still going full speed ahead with animals. Everything I've heard is that we will have a fair this year. It'll very likely be outside, most of it. We are looking to have, on Tuesday, Jostens will be in town to speak to our seniors as well. We are looking to have a graduation ceremony outside, as traditional as possible. We will be able to do what the county and the state allow us to do. Class of 2020, it had to be a virtual and a ceremonial vehicle procession, because that's all that we were allowed to do. Class of 2020, class of 2021, we were able to do it on the field with only the 2 parents in the stands. And quite honestly, I thought that was a very, very well put together graduation. It was all live streamed, so our families at home and across the place could watch. But it was very intimate, very cozy, and the kids seemed, and the parents seemed to really enjoy it. I'm hoping that for the class of 2022, we will be able to do an outside graduation. That is the plan right now, to have an outside graduation and the senior activities that come with being seniors. Again, we go one day at a time, and I just want to encourage everyone to, no matter how crazy or frustrating things can get, just try to keep as much as you can a positive mental attitude toward it. There's a lot that we're going through. A lot of our families are going through a tremendous amount of anxiety right now. All of us are. So getting upset about it and being frustrated will not make the situation go away. But if we lean on each other and we're positive with each other and we smile and we move forward one day at a time, I'm certain we will get through this. So having said that, it's 6:26. I don't want to keep you longer than necessary, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take questions from anyone. And again, like I said, my cell phone's always on. I'm only a text message away. I want to thank all of you for your flexibility, for your understanding, for your support. On behalf of our teachers and counselors, classified staff, they're doing amazing work right now. And I know that all of you in your respective professions are also getting after it and working through this. So keep your heads up, keep getting after it. And if there's any questions, I'll take them for about another minute or so. Otherwise, I'll be ending the call here shortly. So stay safe, make it a masterpiece. Tiger Pride.
Can you clarify, if somebody has a positive test, the quarantine is 5 days, but if they're just exposed and they don't have a positive test, the quarantine is 10 days, is that correct?
It's a 10-day, yes, sir, but it can also be a modified quarantine depending on yes, it can also be modified as long as there's 2 tests within the first 7 days of the quarantine.
So it still has to be a minimum of 7 days then?
Yes, because we asked for a negative test, I believe, on the 3rd day and on the 5th day, and they can come back after the 5th day.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Also, we do have home tests that we've been giving out to students as well. So, you know, if you need a home test, there's two tests that come in each box. So if you need a home test, have your child come by the front office or the nursing office and we'll get them taken care of. So if there are no more questions, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for spending a little bit of time with this evening. Stay safe once again, and Tiger Pride.